the water that is pumped in these remote areas is quite, it needs treatment and desalination at any point. And of course, we had the third one, which is habitat, saving on materials. If something is not doing anything, it really shouldn't be there. And getting that mindset as architects, because here we're not the consultant, we're actually the designers. It means also disciplining ourselves that we are building with what we have and what we can do. So this was the core. What are we trying to achieve? So we set these 3 goals, and we went by reverse engineering the rating system. The architecture and construction, I don't want to go through the list, but one of the key components that we had was to build using a particular stone that has excellent thermal quality, as opposed to digging on site and excavating the sandstone, which would be cheaper, because we wanted to have quite thin walls to allow the cooling aspect of it. We were designing for cooling, non-mechanical aided cooling, and that's where we put all our efforts with the orientation. We increased that, continuing the slab. The ceiling slab becomes the shading across. We raised the entire project was raised 30 centimeters above ground, as if it's on a pavement, the whole thing. And we had to protect the soil underneath, to protect the foundations, because it's a clay-based soil, which means that, a little bit of rain and this whole building can potentially lift and you get all the damages. And this was seen all around us. So using the materials, we designed with green principles that we reduce AC, we reduce energy, we have black and gray water segregation, composting on site, the construction waste went into local landfills, etc. And we achieved pretty good results with what we were working with, because we didn't have the constraints of, does this look good? So around this area, normally what you have, especially in parts of Egypt and many parts, is that we tend to use domes. Domes were wonderful ways of cooling spaces and everything, but then the domes, you end up having very thick walls. So we took a very open-minded approach as to keep it quite contemporary, to keep it very simple and non-invasive in the site. It kind of blends in, but to use certain elements of color as well to reflect and draw in temperatures, to achieve that. Basically, after the second audit that we've now achieved, there's almost 10 degrees. It's almost 10 degrees cooler inside the rooms than it is outside. So that is an answer to the complete discomfort that the farm workers suffer from, and we were working towards that. That was the number one target for all of us. So, like Juta's saying, it's gathering everyone to have a goal and work together to achieving it. Thank you.
Okay, so there we go. Example 1 from here in Egypt, and as you can see, achieving higher savings than they even set out to. And I love the idea of reverse engineering from the rating tool. Now we're going to hear from the Energy Strong approach, which is a video that's been playing around the pavilion here, but now hopefully we can hear it with sound. So we'll see how it goes. And this is all about achieving whole house retrofit of social housing at scale. So they do it street by street sometimes to achieve a net zero energy outcome.
Wir brauchen dringend neue Sanierungslösungen, um klimaneutrales Wohnen schnell für alle zu ermöglichen. Der Energiesprung-Ansatz hat sich in Europa tausendfach bewährt. Jetzt zeigen wir gemeinsam mit innovativen Unternehmen, dass und wie es auch in Deutschland geht.
In der konventionellen Sanierung wird 95% auf der Baustelle gefertigt. In der seriellen Sanierung, wie hier in Hameln, werden 80% in die Fabrik verlagert. Das bringt eine höhere Qualität und vor allem eine höhere Geschwindigkeit bei der Umsetzung. Wir wollen langfristig die Kosten senken, damit die Wohnungswirtschaft günstiger ihren Bestand sanieren kann. Wie machen wir das? Mit automatisierter Planung, mit automatisierter industrieller Produktion von Dach- und Fassadenelementen. Wir integrieren Versorgungstechnik, damit Gebäude wie dieses hier in Hameln rein von außen saniert werden können.
Mit den Erfahrungen, die hier und bei den anderen Piloten gemacht werden, können Technologien und Abläufe immer weiter verbessert werden. So können wir serielle Sanierungslösungen Schritt für Schritt zur Serienreife bringen.
Ich bin froh, dass wir das erste Projekt dieser Art in Deutschland realisiert haben. Der erste zu sein, war wie erwartet eine große Herausforderung. Daher sind wir stolz, dass es uns gelungen ist, im Kuckuck in Hameln ein so überzeugendes Projekt zu realisieren. Wir hoffen, es inspiriert andere und findet somit viele Nachahmer.
Energy Sprung with us here today, but with the technical issues, we are bringing you a video. But please do reach out if you're interested in that model, because it is being replicated around the world, including the States. So take a look at some of those pilot projects. So shall we move on to, please, how to measure and account? Something that everyone is desperate to know about, and a subject that's been coming up again and again. Something we need to be cracking in terms of advancing this agenda is data, and Luca here is very passionate about data. Luca's a senior manager for the built environment at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, my co-host today, and he'll be moderating and taking us through this panel. So over to you, Luca.
Thank you very much. Yeah, indeed. I think it's something we have been working a lot in these past months and years as well, and so I say no, I'm definitely keen to have it here today. And I definitely want to also ask the question. That's why I say let me step in as a moderator for this. So I would like to ask my guest to join on the panel. I will introduce them, and before to start the question, I will play one of our online speaker, which will also send a video that we can play. First, maybe I introduce. Let's see first. Let's play the video first. Let's play the video.
Thank you for inviting me to kick off this important session. My name is Marta Bouchard, and I work for Autodesk, a technology company for design and make software that serves 3 industries: architecture, engineering, and construction, AEC, design and manufacturing, media and entertainment. My role at Autodesk is leading the sustainability strategy for our AEC solutions. For many years, I practiced as a designer, environmental analyst, and sustainability consultant, striving to design high-performing and sustainable buildings. And now I enable Autodesk solutions to do the same. Today, we're talking about measuring impact across the built environment with an approach called whole life carbon, a process in which we account for carbon impacts across the design, build, operate, asset lifecycle. While there are many global forces at play and applicable to the conversation today, I want to focus on 3 opportunity areas to tee up the conversation in the room about data. How can we act now to measure and account for data to halve our built environment emissions by 2030? I'm going to kick off this panel by introducing the challenges and opportunities around digitalization, data, and standardization. First, digitalization. The challenge is that the process of digital transformation of our digital tools or software is rapidly evolving. We've been on this journey, and we're still going. For example, we used to buy software in a box. We used to have dial-up internet and floppy disks. And today we have subscriptions to cloud-based services in an evolving world. When it comes to understanding carbon in the built environment, we are part of a digital transformation. The industry has been based on specialized point-based solutions built on closed proprietary IP. based on desktop file-based technology, and this is now shifting towards open and transparent, more cloud-based solutions that enable collaboration as well as extensibility, which enables flexibility and adaptability for our evolving digital needs. Digitalization is our first opportunity to accelerate our mission to have emissions through whole life carbon accounting. Leveraging digitalization is one way we can enable whole life carbon analysis and make this work faster, simpler, and accessible much earlier in our daily practices. For example, the building industry continues to mature in its use of building information modeling, or BIM software. BIM technology can drive a common methodology and approach to whole life carbon, as it serves as an excellent source of data from which we can measure, analyze, and make informed decisions to decarbonize the built environment. The second is data. The challenge here is that the complexity of what this little four-letter word means in practice in our industries. We say we need data to make decisions. Yeah, of course we do. But the reality is that data in its raw form is quite difficult to do anything with. For example, building data could be elements or objects or cost or materials or weight or size. We're swimming in a sea of data and very little of it is rendered useful. Because what we need is smart and accurate data analysis to make sense of all that data. Data in this context for whole life carbon is really about the core inputs and the outputs from whole life carbon analysis. Today, there are many software tools that enable practitioners to analyze and calculate operational and embodied carbon in planning, design, construction, and operations. Yet we know the outputs from these tools can vary. So the opportunity when it comes to data for whole life carbon, we need to start with three core things. The first, open and transparent data. This means open, decentralized global databases of environmental product declarations and transparent data around energy distribution and efficiency and the consumption by our built environment. The second is structured data around our software tools. This means taking all of our individual digital data and structuring it in a way that is consistent across geographies, disciplines, and practices. And the third is a standard methodology to analyze the data. This means we need a common understanding of what to do with all this data. Which leads me to my third and final point, standardization. The challenge here is that there's not yet a global standard for how to calculate whole life carbon. There are multiple methods for which to make assumptions, run calculations, and analyze the data. There's especially the challenge of data assumptions. What I mean by that is whole life carbon requires forecasting of future impacts associated with future behaviors and decisions around our built environment, in addition to the work we can do today. Since we simply can't know the future, we need to make smart, defensible assumptions and leverage our data that we have today. Fortunately, many of you in the room and at COP27 are separately and together working towards alignment for calculating whole life carbon. While we share a common mission and conceptual framework, we now must align on a collective approach and methodology. The opportunity before us is to align around standardization, which includes data definitions, minimum analysis inputs, and especially around stated boundaries of assumptions. Today, we can put our efforts towards committing to transparency in our current approaches and methodologies. We have to start by learning from each other, cooperating to create global standards, and engaging with and across economic and political institutions. While not an exhaustive list of efforts that are needed, these are some key principles that can drive us all toward global alignment and standardization. I wish you all a fruitful and productive discussion today in the panel. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Marta. Maybe you're listening. Thank you very much. Indeed, I mean, very good words. Actually, I didn't present, but Marta Butcher she's AEC, Architect, Engineering, Construction, Sustainability Lead at Autodesk. And we've been working indeed this past year together about the importance of data digitalization, as she mentioned, the important digitalization that data and data we have many, I'm sure that we will discuss that after, how we make use and what are the right data, and of course the standardization, how we make sure that we use the data in a standardized way on a whole life carbon approach and so on. So let me introduce the panel. So I'm starting from left to right. So Mai Elwani, so she's the co-founder of EPD Africa, EPD Egypt, and Salus Global. Then we have Phil Northcott, Director for Building Transparency. Ryan Kolker, Vice President of Innovation, International Code Council, ICC. And Smir Mordak, Director for Bureau Happold, and also representing RIBA today. Well, maybe again, like before, a quick, where is the microphone? There was the mic. Oh, voila. Making sure you can answer. So, quick question on introduce yourself, but also what is the role that your organization plays in enabling data and all life carbon? You know, why the importance of data and all life carbon for you? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So basically, these are two separate entities, but the beauty of it that they pass across the value chain from building materials, and EPD is the Environmental Product Declaration. So basically, it's done that it measures and registers the environmental and climate impact of each single product that we use in the built environment or in the building. And this helps us as architects to put in consideration in the design phase, and this is Salos, to put in consideration what design components or aspects we should consider when we use different types of products. So they are complementing each other, and the measurements here that we do is from cradle to grave. So basically you have the entire life cycle, carbon life cycle, from the minute that this product has been manufactured, transported, used in construction, then went to demolition or retrofitting or others. So basically this is what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Yeah, Phil Northcott. Building Transparency is committed to providing open data and open access tools to everybody in the construction sector to help them make better decisions, and especially for manufacturers to make sure that when they make more sustainable products, they are credited for that, and they are not, when people do not make more sustainable products, they are not credited for that. Our main tool is a large, powerful database. What it lets us do is take large numbers of EPDs from people like EPD Egypt and arrange them by performance characteristics and by product category, and let you do statistics. And one of the things that tells you is what is possible. What can the industry actually produce if you ask them to? And in fact, you don't even necessarily need to source the best of the products. Often, if you say, do at least this well to your concrete provider, your steel provider, very often they can do it. And my last comment before I pass the mic is, throughout the AEC community, manufacturers through to designers, there are people who know the right answer and want to pursue it if only they have a business case.
So I'm Ryan Kolker at the International Code Council. We develop model building codes and standards and the tools that really support their effective use. So we've already heard a little bit around the important role of standards, but really supporting that verification and consistency that drives decision making in the market. So one of the key things that we're working on with ASHRAE is development of a standard to support measurement and verification across the entire life cycle of carbon impacts on materials, design choices, building operation, and ultimately deconstruction and reuse.
Hi, I'm Smith Mordak, and so I'll guess I mostly wear my RIBA hat today. So I want to talk about a couple of projects that we've got on. So in 2019, the RIBA created our 2030 Climate Challenge, which is all about sort of setting embodied carbon targets and as well as operational energy and operational water targets. But what we're doing now to kind of build off that is create a built environment carbon database, which is a platform where everybody who's sort of involved can input their data and create like a huge I guess maybe all of these things link. This is where we're going to get into this. But but the point is that you can sort of submit your data, and also the really important thing is that you can then compare that like for like, so you can benchmark. Because at the moment we've got a lot of the conversation around embodied carbon over the last few days. I love your hat. Has really started to mature, but now what we need to do is make sure that we're actually talking about the same thing. We're not kind of comparing apples and oranges. Somebody isn't saying, oh, but my building is much better than your building. It's like, actually, because you've not included something, or like, and so the point of this database is to make sure that we're all actually talking about the same thing, so that when we are sort of moving forward to actually how we can implement the sort of reduction targets that we want to get to, that we all know, making sure that we're talking about the same data. So yeah, looking forward to getting into this conversation.
Perfect, yeah. So really, like, you can see almost the flow of data, how we generate the data and how we transfer and make use of it. Well, how we can demonstrate. And maybe the question after, but I'll keep it for after, is where you would use the data, why it's important, the process. But before to start the next round of question, I wanted to remind the race to zero, the action statement. So on one side, the vision that we want to achieve, so net zero 2030 in operation, halving embodied carbon, at least halving embodied carbon, that's for 2030. But another important action statement that we really want to strengthen is that all actors in the built environment must collect, analyze, transparently report and share data on a whole life carbon performance of any new build or retrofit project. So this is really because, I mean, we have seen everywhere the importance of data. Data are crucial to make decisions on how we design, how we construct, and so. So maybe to start the discussion first on the data and the data collection, maybe if you can share a bit on what are the challenges that you have been facing in collecting data. Why are we speaking about the data challenge when we heard as well from Marta, we say the data, we have plenty of data. So why we then say is a challenge of data? So maybe actually understanding as well from a global south perspective.
Yes, of course. Allow me to raise a question. Imagine a client or a consultant sitting on that side and hearing all of us actually saying we have the data, and then are we working in silos? As a consultant or a client, I'm amazed by the amount of organizations that are regulating data, but actually I don't know which one to use. So I think as an architect or as one of my companies, Salos, is actually conflicting which data I should use. So this is the number one challenge as a stakeholder who is a designer or as a client. So this is the first challenge that I think everyone, North and global North and global South had. But particularly for the global South, the problem that we don't have enough data. So I think on your database, you have this challenge that acquiring data from our side, and this is what EPD Egypt, hopefully EPD MENA is being launched now, and this is what we're trying to do, is to provide your platform with enough data from actual products and actual building data. And so we have two approaches. You need data from buildings for construction and operation, design, construction, and operation, and you need data from the built material, building material itself. And this is what we're trying to do, is to give the platform this access of data points. We're talking about thousands of data sets, thousands. Yeah, per product. I mean, per product you can have thousands of data sets across many climate impacts or environmental impact. And this includes eutrophication, carbon impact. Of course, all of them, it's an carbon equivalent, but at the end, they break down on a very micro level. So again, answering question is the accessibility of data. We don't have the awareness. So I would start with the awareness. Actually, our clients, who are the manufacturers as well, they don't know why we're collecting this data. Because they don't see the business case, as you said. They don't see the business case. They don't see the profits. So, and I think how we propose to tackle that, we tell them what is the cost of risking not complying now. It will be a very high cost of not complying. And then this will take us to the problem that they're not under a regulated market as well. So 3 problems: no policies to regulate, no drive for the manufacturer to actually, collect data internally, and no awareness, and this is important, and it's a risk to the business.
Phil, maybe also to hear from your perspective. So you have been doing data for long, and
a little while, yeah. Well, data is like everything you work in. The main challenges depend on which area you're looking at. So, with environmental product declarations, one of the biggest problems is it's mostly not structured today. It's done kind of like a marketing document, typically done in Microsoft Word. It's amusing because, of course, people use very good digital tools to generate the data in the first place, and then we kind of destructure it into marketing documents. So the key answer that we've come up with for that is an open standard called OpenEPD, which is an open interoperable standard that anyone can use. It's for moving EPD data between databases, between program operators, and compliant databases, and of course between those databases and the tools that use it, whether they're CAD tools by Autodesk, whether they are analysis tools, and also once you have a good set of structured data, you can generate answers for governments as well. So the opportunity there is OpenEPD is to have a really well automated structured data set that can work all the way through the supply chain, right? Aggregate, or limestone to the kiln, cement to the concrete to the building. So on the building side, and this is hopefully something you guys are working well on, there, as soon as you dig into it, in any depth, you find it's really hard to compare one building against another. There's a lot of variables. In particular, it really matters what's in the soil. I got schooled by a number of structural engineers saying, can't we just, and they said, no, you can't. What I would say is, we've worked with a bunch of stakeholders to get well-structured kind of demographics and some kind of coverage around, standardized coverage around what is analyzed in a building, which I think over time will let us build up a data set that people can actually get answers from. The opportunity I'll throw in there is that we've developed a technique based on personalized medicine for anonymizing buildings in a way that you really can't dial back who it was or what exactly the details were, but which don't mess up the statistics when you get large numbers together. None of this is a secret. She probably knows the technique I used with adding a Gaussian random variable and then cutting it off. But it's another opportunity to get people to submit their data.
Actually, I want to build on that. So because then the question also, like I saw that at the time we are a bit, we need to make a bit fast. No, not your answer, but we started with a break. We enjoyed the break a bit. I actually want to ask the question first to Smith and then come back. So, I mean, touching on the database that you mentioned, the experience on the challenge, the database, the data collected that you have in your database, and kind of what does the experience that's mentioned at the moment on the data, how is in the database reflected, and how does that output that you have from the database are this big gap that provides, or what can we do to get then eventually more full analysis that provide make an assessment, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the challenge that you're referring to, I suppose, is exactly the challenge that the database is can you hear me? Sorry, thank you. is trying to address, because at the moment, mostly the kind of the data sets that exist in the UK in terms of the built environment, other than sort of ones that people privately hold, is that they're very there's a huge discrepancy between what's included. So we have, some people, they're including the information, say, let's talk about embodied carbon, in terms of the early stages. So, at the emissions associated with, extracting and transporting and bringing to site. Maybe there's stuff on construction, maybe there's not. Maybe it includes the superstructure and the substructure and some of the facade elements, but actually it's not including a lot of the building services, for example, which is much more difficult to get EPDs for, and so on. And so we're not comparing the same thing. So the idea with the database is that we break this all down in the way that we collect the data. It's very clear which modules, which aspects of the building you're submitting it for, and then you can, through kind of benchmarking each of these different aspects, you can then compare like for like. So we understand, you can start to then benchmark, okay, these sectors in these great regions with these ground conditions, such as so important as well. So then we know what we're looking at. Because at the moment, I think that the problem is, somebody said, oh, but I've got 300 kilograms a square meter the carbon dioxide equivalent per square meter. Aren't I doing brilliantly? And it's like, yes, but you haven't included the lifts and a lot of your, pipe work. And so and it's just so difficult to sort of say whether something, you can't verify whether or not something is good or not. And maybe I'll just also plug another project that's related to this, which is the UK Net Zero Building Standard, which actually will be based on properly verifiable data, sort of, I think, 9 to 12 months away from being able to be used. But then you'll be able to understand, is this building actually a net zero building based on the kind of whole life data in a way that is verifiable by kind of splitting it up into components rather than just like aggregating it and then turning it into a marketing document. I love that thing, like when somebody should have used a spreadsheet but they've used a Word document, and it's like there's a weird like power move in doing that, and it's so much the problem. I love that. But yeah.
No, thanks. Yeah, and actually I think I didn't do it on purpose, but like what you just mentioned, the importance of standardization and looking at the same way. I mean, Nigel from Arup, he said the same. Sometimes one refer to a number, 300, well, thanks, you forgot this. Or one maybe even address like 12. That's because it actually maybe is divided by year. So actually, like the way we actually need to make things more in a common way, and that's where the standardization process come in. And that's, I think you definitely have also the experience on that, and maybe as well the work that you are initiating now, I think is very important to touch on.
Yeah, so I'll touch on a couple things. So we sort of talked about the sort of different pictures that we have on sort of the role and impact of buildings. And so, hopefully sort of standardization helps sort of break those silos. I mean, we've spent, 40 plus years looking at operational energy. And as we continue to, bring that energy down, decarbonize the grid, the embodied piece becomes more and more important. But how do you sort of make those decisions on, do I use product X, which in and of itself has a higher global impact, but has a significant role in reducing operational energy, and sort of where is that balance? And so you need to be able to sort of talk about that in a consistent and cohesive way. I think the other important piece is we need to be able to talk about the impact of buildings beyond ourselves as a building industry. So if we're looking for, financial institutions and businesses to invest in buildings because they have higher priorities, we need a basis to be able to talk about that in a way that is consistent and they understand and sort of feeds into sort of their broader goals. So if they're, making procurement decisions on, sort of different, products, we can have the conversation of, well, you probably want to invest in your buildings first, because that's bigger impact, and we can then have the consistent data to be able to do that. And so that really is what sort of underlines the process of standards development. So folks have talked about we have sort of multiple different tools that sort of cover different aspects of the process, but being able to bring them all together in a way that we can talk consistently and bring that broader value is really where the standards process comes in. And so that's really where we're focused, is sort of bringing all of those tools together, identifying the gaps, filling those gaps, and being able to have an approach that governments, investors, and others can really rely on to help continue to drive increased progress.
Thanks. Yeah, perfect. I will have to unfortunately already come to the conclusion. I will ask a question on, and and give you also a few minutes because I want to bring in one input before. But in 3 years' time, when we have solved the data problem, when we harmonize the way we look, what do you think it will change in the built environment, and how you think that once from our side we fix the data issue, how you see in the bigger picture, in the bigger system, stakeholder of the whole built environment value chain, including financial institution, including government, making the right decision and enable us to achieve the halving emission. Before, I just want to quickly give the word as well to the architect. Sorry, I just was looking at
Well, thank you. My name is Kathleen Lane with the American Institute of Architects, and I just wanted to talk about a data set that we have with our 94,000 architect members, very much like the RIBA program. It's called the AIA 2030 Commitments, and it was initiated in 2007 to really challenge the whole design community to offer transparency and accountability through sharing and benchmarking data to reach a targeted goal of decarbonization by 2030. This was in 2007. So the RIBA program was a template for this. It's really grown. We have 12 years of data now. It was started with the idea of tracking operational emissions, and so tracking design operational energy, so predicted energy use intensity, but we're now moving it into whole life carbon. So we have 2 years of data on embodied carbon, and we're beginning to get a lot more traction on tracking renewables, tracking them by fuel source, and buildings that are electrified. So that's really, really positive to see. Although, you know, we encourage our members to just start tracking. I mean, we have to start measuring someplace. And then, you know, the challenge now is how we can standardize and share and analyze this data together. So we are also now, the next move for us is into materials. We have a materials pledge that looks at not just embodied carbon of materials, but also the human health, social health and equity, and circularity issues. So determining how to measure those things is our next big challenge. What we are seeing, though, also in a positive way is 44% of the buildings that have been reported just this past year, in 2021, they report sort of by, you know, filing your taxes. 44% are existing buildings, so we're seeing a big growth in that. And yeah, we have 56,000 design professionals. We have over 1,200 firms as part of the program now. It's doubled in the past 5 years, so it's that level of participation is also really positive.
Excellent, thank you very much. I think this is the beauty of the COP, that you meet many people during these 2 weeks and then enables to learn more, and I thought is a very valid input. So yeah, as I mentioned, just like what is the future like in 3 years' time when we solve that? How we will enable that? And yeah, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think eventually we'll make it simpler. I think this is what we need, to make it simpler. So many silos that are being broken down now at the COP27. And I think everyone is willing now to share their information and align. Because otherwise it's confusing for architects, designers, and everyone. I think we are on the road to make it simpler for everyone.
Where I'd like to see us be, at least on the materials side, is that the data is being exchanged and being used to such a degree that material providers are realizing that being at the bottom of the scale in carbon is an economic imperative. And that they are competing each other's brains out to reduce carbon.
Yeah, that's certainly a good one. From my perspective, having the standards in place and really driving progress, target setting, and continuing to drive momentum towards a decarbonized building sector.
I'm going to be grumpy. Just because we've had the great answers, and I think that's really important. I just want to say that it's really important that we're using data that's going to enable us to work together, to share in order to make informed decisions. what I really don't want it to do, and I think we have to be careful to make sure that we don't end up here in 3 years, is that actually these requirements for data, requirements for standards, actually make it more difficult to bring innovative solutions and simple solutions and indigenous solutions to, to play, because we have seen some very silly situations where, you're importing materials from miles and miles and miles away overseas because it's got an EPD, whether you've got something next door. So I just want to make sure that we are not creating any of barriers here that we didn't mean to have. So yeah, sorry about the negative things.
No, actually, very good point. I mean, I don't think we need all the data. We need to make sure that we also use the data correctly, but also that we do the right decision based on common sense, maybe sometimes. Thank you very much. Maybe a warm thank you for all. So maybe back to you, Victoria.
Yes, I'm going to steal the mic off you. Thank you, Luca. And thanks very much to our panel. Yes, please. So we have one more video.
The 21st century green building movement.
One more video to share with you before we go into our final panel. And I just wanted to give a quick mention that this is the CII IGBC, the Indian Green Building Council's headquarters in Hyderabad. And I was there just a few weeks ago for their enormous Green Building Congress. And I got to visit this building. To your point, Smith, this building was created in 2008 with some very simple solutions and approaches to ensuring that it has as much sort of low-tech approaches to achieving a high-performance building as possible. 2008 in India, and then it achieved in 2019 the first net zero certification in India because it installed many more solar panels than you'll see in this video. But I just wanted to show you that it can absolutely be done without waiting for that perfect set of data, right?
The 21st century green building movement was triggered off when CII, Godrej Green Business Center in Hyderabad, IGBC's headquarters, became India's first platinum-rated green building in 2003.
And I don't know about you, but one of my favorite parts of my job is getting to share stories like this at forums like this about buildings like that. So thank you very much. I know our next panel are itching to get up and share with you some more information about how we're going to achieve this goal. And I'm pleased to hand over to James Drinkwater, formerly of World GBC, but now Head of Built Environment for the Louders Foundation.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Yeah, we'll do a double act. I've got this mic. Well, welcome one and all to this next session on how to enable change, where we're going to look further at the specific perspectives of certain stakeholders, what really they're adding to change, and whilst each of them will wear their own hats from industry and from finance, from workers, communities, from research and so on, I want to really lean into listening to one another. Because if we want systems change, we need much more systemic collaboration. It happens ad hoc, but we really need to be at COP listening to other perspectives and leaning in to not just what we have to offer and what we want to offer, but what others need from us. So delighted. I'll do short intros because the panelists will have a minute to intro themselves and what they're up to. Delighted that Jamie Rusby from Velux is joining us with an industry hat on, but I know all of our panelists wear many, many hats. Aditi Maheshwari from IFC, wearing a finance hat, but again, many hats. Majed El Arwari, who's on the non-exec board of CESC. I've got that right now. It's not CESC. I'll let you tell the audience what it's all about. And Alejandra Rivera, who's from IHRB, the Institute for Human Rights and Business. So, we'll be talking about the responsibility of all of us as stakeholders, wearing all of our hats, to really achieve this breakthrough change that we want in the built environment. I'd love you to each just do a 60-second intro of yourself, your organization, and specifically lean into how your organization is enabling, from its perspective, market transformation. Jamie, first to you.
Yes, hello everyone. Great to be here. I'm Jamie. I am the Group Sustainability Director at Velux, and we are a manufacturer of roof windows for the residential and commercial sector. So we're into daylight and fresh air through the roof. We have a sustainability strategy, but I think that's probably the way we're enabling change primarily today. And it sits in our decarbonisation strategy, where we've set out targets to reduce our operational emissions by 100% by 2030 and to halve our value chain emissions. So I think that's where it really sits, in the materials that go into our products, the glass, the plastic, the aluminium, the other metals, decarbonising those materials by working with our suppliers in our supply chain.
Wonderful, thank you, Jamie. Aditi, over to you.
Thanks so much. Aditi Maheshwari from the International Finance Corporation. I work as part of the leadership team in the Climate Business Department. For those that don't know, the International Finance Corporation, it's the private sector arm of the World Bank Group. We work in emerging markets to ensure and mobilize private investment in economic development. Accelerating finance for green buildings has been a core part of IFC's own climate strategy. We have invested over $5.5 billion in this sector and have been working to mobilize and accelerate broad adoption of green building standards across the board through the introduction of EDGE, a green building certification standard that was designed to be accessible to all segments of the market in different countries. And since it was launched in 2015, it has been adopted in over 80 countries and covering $43 billion worth of floor space. That I think is about 40 million square meters since 2015. So there is broad uptake, and that's what IFC is doing right now in terms of market transformation. We also work with heavy industry and decarbonization in different sectors, but I'm going to focus on green buildings here.
Super, wonderful. And a great stat from IFC, 24.7 trillion opportunity in green buildings in emerging markets before 2030. So let's get moving. Majed, over to you.
Yeah. Hello, I'm happy to be here first. I'm Majed Hawari. I'm here representing Heritage University. CESC, Center of Excellence Smart Construction. So I'm non-executive board member of the CESC. CESC has been founded since 2 years from Heritage University. It's a kind of partnership between the industry and the academia, so we can move faster with changing the mindset, the culture, the awareness, and research project related to the construction industry. The pillars of the CISC, we are talking about technology, we are talking about innovation, and we are talking about the sustainability concept. For me, I'm representing a non-executive board member because I'm representing the industry in the CISC. My full-time job, I'm the CIO of the AJC group in the UAE. So we are one of the founders of the CISC. CISC has been founded with primarily four founding partners. One of them is AJC Construction in the UAE. So we are doing a kind of bridging between the academia and the industry for the research. So I'm wearing two hats, the industry and supporting the CISC and teaching with the Heritage University in technology and innovation and sustainability.
Great intros, everyone. This sets you up for talking to them after the next break. Alejandra from IHRB.
Thank you. I'm Alejandra Rivera from the Institute for Human Rights and Business. So we advocate for human rights in different industries, and specifically at the Built Environment Program, where I work as Global Program Manager. We advocate for human rights or incorporating these principles into the way we think, we design, finance, plan, and construct our cities and the built environment specifically. So when we speak of change on this, I can think of two ways. So one, we need to accelerate decarbonization, but how do we do that also in a just and inclusive way? So that's the social dimension that we bring on, and we focus on this concept of just transition in the built environment using three leverages. So first, strengthening the evidence base, the case for the just transition, and we do that through action research in 8 cities globally. Second, we also work with local stakeholders in these 8 cities and many others around the world, also facilitating the building of narratives and visions of what the just transition really means for these people locally. And third, getting the message to the key stakeholders in the industry in different sectors in the city. So that's it in a nutshell.
One wonderful nutshell. And I'm going to pause, and the benefit of going last is you get to go first on the next bit. So the key question here, the exam question, is how do we enable a future where no building is inefficient, unhealthy, or contributes to the emissions problem at all? So that's our exam question for today. Can you go a little bit deeper? Because I want to stay with you for a bit. We heard some fantastic speeches earlier on the need to implement ready-baked industry kind of solutions and build the kind of political buy-in, but we've heard probably too little about workers, about communities, about some of the really critical actors for this change to really spread societally. So can you go a little bit deeper, Alejandro, on some of the ways we can actually achieve that transition, that exam statement, kind of what needs to happen, and talk a little bit about this, the research, the action-based work that you're doing on the ground to bring it to life.
Yeah, thank you so much for posing the question. I think it's very important to speak about the how. I think so far we are pretty much in line of what we need to do as far as the changes, the carbonization, and on the why, but the how is the key question. So I think for us is really key that each stakeholders recognizes their key role and acknowledges how important it is, like their function. And because the behavior of each stakeholder, each sector, really sends these signals of change to the others. So for example, the national government having a national policy framework, like having a good national adaptation plans of the policies of the carbonization roadmaps, and that we're doing in some countries. Also leading from example the procurement requirements, the public procurement, having efficient agencies to implement and enforce these policies. So that creates a demand signal to the industry. So now on the other hand, on businesses, we have a lot of net zero commitments, but the issue, the challenge is usually how does that translate into internal policies or standard operating procedures to really create change beyond CSR or ESG. On the role of the civil society, I think is also very important, which is actually all of us. We tend to think of civil society as a different sector, something separate from us, but at the end we're all consumers, we are tenants, we pay rent, we are the consumers of the built environment, of energy. So one, we can change behavior with our options, with our attitudes, if we have the option to. In the global south, not so many people have the option to change behavior. But then when that's not the case, we can also create change by advocating for the democratization of solutions, to be able to be part of the change, and to leverage the size and the scale of civil society to scale those solutions as well.
Huge power there. Workers and communities not often in the room, so we've perhaps got some room to do reaching out. It sounded like you were throwing over a little bit to industry, so Jamie, I'm going to bring you in on actually what do we need to do to really achieve this transition? What does industry need to offer, and what do you need from others?
Thank you. I was just writing down an answer to that. No, that's good. No, but I think you put it so well to say we've had many net zero commitments, but how does that translate into standard operating procedures and policies? And of course, that is really where the action is. And I think one way we can accelerate that is by talking about 2030 all the time. So I think we've set a target to halve our value chain emissions by 2030 from a 2020 baseline. I can tell you that focuses minds on how to get it done, because the decarbonization is so sharp in that period of time. So I think that has really focused our attention on needing to achieve quite big reductions each year up to 2030 whilst growing the business. So I think that's the first part, set a short-term target and make it an ambitious one. Then I think it translates into, okay, what are the levers to be able to achieve that target? And for us, we've identified the levers, and most of it in the short term comes from upstream, from the materials. So to say, okay, it takes a while to redevelop the products. So what can we do in the short term? Well, we can change the carbon profile of the materials that we source. So we work with suppliers on that, and we enter partnerships, and we work in that way. And then up for 2024 and 2025, the product design changes start coming in. So we can start designing with innovative materials, with different materials, with fewer materials, and build that into the actual product itself and achieve reductions from that part. So I think it is set the ambitious target that really focuses the minds, and then look at what are the levers to start moving, and then just get going.
Love it. And in the spirit of just getting going, I'm interested, Aditi, what can we do today? You know, finance, what can be offered in to really make this transition occur and start to move faster, and what do you have to offer the others?
So I think Alejandro really kind of very eloquently set out what's needed. On the financing, I think we think about it from three interconnected angles: more ways to finance green buildings, the right standards to define them, and also the right policies to sustain them. And all of this needs sort of the evidence-based an awareness, which I think has been rapidly being accelerated around the benefits of green building, which then translates into their valuations and thinking about how they fit into portfolios. And so we're seeing that movement already in sort of the uptake for financing green buildings, and including the green construction financing. Good example, Bancolombia in Colombia is largest commercial bank, which provides over 40% of the construction finance in the country. They realized the business value of green construction and decided to grow their green buildings portfolio. They to finance the expansion, the bank issued a $117 million green bond with IFC originally, and then using the proceeds of the green bond and their own capital, they offered green construction financing at lower rates than conventional loans. And the more measurably green a project was, the lower the rate of financing. So that actually was incentivizing the green construction. Then Bancolombia issued another green loan on the back of that, green bond on the back of that, worth $100 million. And that bond was oversubscribed 2.8 times, attracted 72 domestic investors, which then lowered the cost of capital for the bank itself, and then other banks in the region have started taking note and are following suit and copying. So you're seeing that ripple effect within the financial sector taking root. And then what actually helps financiers and developers sort of scale up these green building solutions is concrete standards and policies, right, coming through from the government. So the right standards and policies send clear signal that supports future investments, and we are also seeing, then the catalytic role that government can play that you were mentioning, not just on the procurement side and the market, but ensuring market data and incentives for financial actors and property developers to sort of take root in the space. They can incentivize banks to accelerate green building practices, and home improvement loans and mortgages, as well as other green financial products, can sort of actually help continue that snowball effect. So one last thing, green governments are really, really large asset owners in terms of buildings, right? Invest in buildings. So if invest in real estate. So when governments start mobilizing and shifting their own portfolio of buildings, that actually creates the technical capacity and sends the market signals that actually drives the rest of the sector to follow suit. So that, I think, is another big thing for now.
If you heard from Yves Laurent from France earlier, they're all going to get together, all the governments, so you can deliver that message. Majed, you know, we've heard about standards and policies. You sit at really the sharp end, right, of kind of some transformational research, and how do you get that into industry? So what can we do from your vantage point to really transform quicker?
Okay, for us as CESC, we are looking for the actually we are running with the industry partner the real show at in the built environment. So we are looking for the real challenges which might delay or stop what all initiatives you are trying to do. Built environment and construction industry, it's known of one of the lowest profitability margin across different industries. Built environment and construction industry is known that it's like the lowest in digital transformation, and they rank it like second to the lowest to the hunting. Capacity of buildings and looking for profit with the tight profitability margin. All these, whatever initiatives or guidelines or things we are trying to put, it will not happen since if we are not dealing with the real reasons of stopping all initiatives. So what we are trying to do, that improving the awareness related to the different stakeholders, moving the concept of the sustainability and digital transformation from being a kind of cost to be a kind of investment, considering what we say the LCC, the life cycle costing of the building. So we design an asset for like a year, we build in 3-4 years, and we operate for 50, 70 or 100 years. So adopting this concept of LCC is going to change the whole mindset of the developer, contractor, and consultant as well. So if I have a developer, they are developing a building and selling to another operator, they see an added value of selling a sustainable building, a sustainable smart building to the developer. So the operational and running costs, which almost it's 90, if you consider again the LCC, 90% of the cost is during the asset management, not during the construction. So adapting the concept related to sustainability and smart things are going to change the game drastically. If the operator themselves, the developer is the same, the operator, they will see directly the added benefits of annual saving during these things. So it's not only related to our responsibility to the environment or the concept related to the economy and society, it's about direct profitability. I'm trying to be very, very straightforward with the people that it is not sustainability and smart things is not like a luxury, is not a fancy word to use every day. It's a business profitability added to the industry.
Efficiency, certainly an interesting one. I know Victoria's going to give us about another 4 or 5 minutes, so I want to throw it straight over to questions that you might have. Comments, again, throw in your perspective as another stakeholder with another hat on if you like. Otherwise, I'm going to take the moderator's role of throwing out a lot of questions my side. Any hands up? Yes, one over here.
Hi, I'm Jill Ferguson. I work at the California Public Utilities Commission. I'm also a PhD student at Stanford. I'm working on house retrofits in the U.S., mostly in low-income households, mobile homes, renters, trying to figure out how we actually finance that. Like, how do we get energy efficiency, electrification, maybe even decarb into everybody's home in a way that the onus is not on them to pay for it, and the bills actually go down. So the closest thing we've ever gotten to this, which is not fiscally sustainable in the long run, is utilities using their tariffed authority to provide upgrades to people's homes as an essential service, right? They procure demand side resources by upgrading people's homes, but eventually they'll pass that on in the rates to people. And also, not all utilities have enough balance sheet, like PG&E, right, went bankrupt, to actually support something like this. And so I'm wondering how far you think that kind of thing might go, and then what fills in the rest of the capital stack to make decarb and like a right that everyone gets.
Who wants to take that easy one to get it started? Yep.
Thank you for the question. Definitely not an easy one. That's something that we're trying to figure out as well. I think it's important to look at, also related to what I mentioned before, the scale of that civil society, or like when you look at the entire city, like the leverage that you can have on that. So thinking, for example, some recommendations that we have done in a report that we wrote last year about the right to housing and how to incorporate these like social dimensions in that. For example, could be an incentive for investors to, instead of focusing in renovations for one specific buildings and trying to extract profits out of that, to work with the government to have an entire social housing development program or retrofit program for an entire district or an entire city, in which you leverage the scale and the investor makes the profit out of the scale, instead of out of an exorbitant lucrative one project in one building. So that is one point, and also the instrument of rent caps. So when you have that type of scale, then you can actually get some lower profit margin, but using that, it's still keeping as a policy instrument the rent cap. So then the improvements that the economic benefits that come out of the retrofit are not passed on to higher rent prices. So it has to be, I think, a combination of the right policies on rent caps, and also leveraging the skill that you can have when working with the governments.
Great. I don't know if anyone else wants to take that one on. Aditi, did you have a hand up?
Go ahead.
Yeah, if I might add a quick point to this one, we are trying to adopt a concept, we call it like construction Uberization. So it's pay as you go. Whatever we are going to do as an investment, it's going to be for the end user, as like when you use Uber, you don't have to buy a car, you just call them when you have. So those things, along with the finance initiative, I think could be added value to what you have just mentioned.
Yeah. Accessibility, scale, profitability that business needs, these things exist in tension.
I mean, I completely agree with what Alejandro said about the scale, and because the investors are seeing that these buildings tend to generate higher rental income, and therefore are willing to invest in this space. From the benefit of the user, they see reduced utility bills, right? So if you are able to somehow sort of connect that divide so that everyone kind of extracts the benefit that they would from being in that green building, and then you have, the regulatory piece that is kind of critical to drive this is also essential. I can't comment on the US side because we work in emerging markets, right? So we are working to try and identify large-scale solutions for affordable housing using the EDGE Green Building Certification in emerging markets right now. But this is not for retrofit, which is a different thing. New construction is where we have been focusing our attention, but the retrofit piece, there are New York and other cities have programs that they are putting in place, incentive structures for retrofitting green buildings and making sure that investors, owners, and operators are putting those structures in place. There may be examples out there, but that, again, New York isn't necessarily in the low-income housing space, which is the challenge here.
And I'll pass the last word to Jamie.
Yeah, you mentioned you're doing a PhD, so I'll do a shout out for the Healthy Homes Barometer, which is a piece of research we pulled together. It's very European focused, but that clearly makes the it describes the impact of living in poor quality and unhealthy homes on Europeans, and then provides some financial numbers actually on the business case for solving this challenge, both from an energy and health perspective. So yeah, little shout out for that.
Yeah, and I'll do a quick shout out before. I want a soundbite, key takeaways from the session, and also today, your COP in general in a moment from the audience, but some of the work colleagues are doing with community land trusts, new models for affordable housing, and how those provide a really exciting playground for industry innovation in an accessible, affordable way. I'm going to come, Jamie, to you first of all, very quick, under kind of 20-30 seconds, key takeaways from you on COP so far, and how all stakeholders play their role in really driving this transformation.
Yeah, I've been hanging out here in this pavilion quite a lot, and it's always you come to COP and you see the discussions that are happening, and it's not enough, and then you come here and you see the solutions that are available and we need to get going with. So I think that's my takeaway, and also fantastic to have human rights named on a panel. I haven't heard that yet, so so good.
More of that to come.
Yes.
I completely agree on the solutions piece. I've been really fascinated by the degree of engagement and the collaboration on the public and private side, and the solutions that are being generated and in that context. And I think that's more of what we need. We cannot do, neither public sector nor private sector can do this alone, and to find the sweet spot of creating solutions that work for everyone is what I've been hearing and I want to see more of.
Wonderful.
For me, I can say clearly that we are taking things related to sustainability seriously now, especially in the region. I'm Egyptian and I live in Dubai, so we are taking it seriously in the region, and especially in the built environment, we are taking a very quick steps towards the sustainability. Especially after the COVID, I always say that the COVID is it was a quite positive push to the construction industry for the technology and for the sustainability.
Thank you. And Alejandro, the last word, the human rights perspective, a key one?
Yeah, thanks. I think key takeaways from this session and from the COP so far, it's been this openness to start talking more about human rights, about the social issues. So that has been very inspiring and rewarding for us. I think it's, the one point that I wanted to make is that we speak so much about the climate transition, but we cannot have a climate transition that is not just, that is not based, that is inclusive, based on human rights. So we really need to emphasize that for the next COP and all the work that is in between in these years. And just to say a word on the just transition is usually associated with workers, thanks to the work of the ILO, but it's important to expand this concept for tenants and the local communities, for workers down the supply chain as well, indigenous peoples that might be affected with extractive industries, ocean communities. So there's a lot of other affected groups that we need to keep on mind and be aware of the rights of them. So thank you for the opportunity to be here to speak about these important topics and to contribute to the session.
No better last words, so I will leave them with you, and I'd ask you all to thank our audience, and I'll hand back.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, James, for moderating the excellent panel. That was really nice day. So, Victoria, you have a mic?
Thank you.
So, thank you very much. So, wow. So, tell me, what did you learn? What did you learn today? So, it was really interesting.
Well, given that we both work in the decarbonisation of the built environment, I learned a huge amount from this session. I mean, I think we've learned that simple is best, right? We already have some of the solutions at our fingertips, at our disposal. We're simply not making the most of them. We're not mobilising them enough. The lowest cost options that are available to us today, and we need to be applying them now. The policymakers are looking to us for solutions. So there's plenty of success stories out there to replicate. This really just scratches the surface. We had so much to choose from, didn't we, in terms of solutions, in terms of people that could come up here and share their stories. So thank you for being here with us today. We heard that we have a duty as designers not to add more carbon from construction, that we have to listen and engage with youth. And from Alejandra, I want to borrow your quote, to leverage the impact and scale of civil society to address the impact and scale of our challenge. So thank you so much for bringing that perspective to us today. So let's use these takeaways, everything that you've learned from this massive session today, and let's get to work and come back and convene again and report on our progress at COP28. Thank you very much for joining us. Last word from Luca on tomorrow. Sorry.
So yeah, thank you. I guess.
Yeah.
So tomorrow, obviously, it's the big day tomorrow. Tomorrow is the Human Settlement Day, Solution Day, and that's where generally we will come up with the built environment as a big important topic. So you will see here there is tomorrow the, actually in the morning there is even the building breakthrough announcement at 9 o'clock here. Then 10 o'clock, action to our net zero emissions, circular, resilient, built environment, cities for everyone, everywhere. So that's the part of the Marrakesh Partnership Human Settlement Day, part of the main program. Then there is a built environment breakthrough at 12:30, and then the closing of our building for a resilient and net zero emission future. That's we bring together again the Building to COP coalition here, followed by a cocktail reception. So make sure that you're here to get some drinks. So
the important part.
Thank you very much to all of you for joining us. Thank you. I hope it was interesting. We tried to bring together a narrative. So thank you very much. Final thing, I have to say, last year at COP, Victoria and myself, I was moderating a panel together with her on my birthday.
No, he's not.
So today, by chance, is her birthday. So she say not to sing happy birthday, but I think we should. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Victoria. Happy birthday to you. Woo! Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody, and see you tomorrow.